Welcome to Read Local NH, a podcast and TV show devoted to celebrating New Hampshire authors. I'm Laura Knoy, along with co-host Margaret Porter, who is host and producer of Turning Pages, another show produced by Concord TV and devoted to books and literary happenings here in the Granite State. And Margaret, it is always nice to be on the air with you.
Likewise.
And also today, our guest author is Diane Les Bequets, with her newly released novel, Where the Water Meets the Sky. Diane is the author of 5 other novels, which we put in front of us, including the national bestseller, Breaking Wild. All of her books reflect her deep connection with the natural world. And Diane, I am so excited to have you on Read Local NH. Welcome.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Margaret. I'm really glad to be here.
So what is the basic story outline of Where the Water Meets the Sky?
So if I had to say in one sentence, it would be about a brave young woman seeking wholeness and love in Michigan's beautiful wildscape of the Upper Peninsula. On a more micro level, I'd say it's also about that young woman as a child who escapes from a fire that takes the life of her mother. And 10 years later, after having moved away with her father to another small town, she returns to the peninsula of her childhood, to the fisheries and the waters and the woods and the birds and the flora, the fauna, also to her grandmother, to cousins, aunts, uncles, and she assists her uncle on an environmental study of trees. But over the course of that summer, that's where we also see Abby just really revisit the night of the fire, what happened, gain some understanding. And we also just see this transformation in her. I think it's just really fun to watch her and witness this place in her life where she arrives, where she's just poised for the rest of her life, right? And poised for something really beautiful and expansive. She's no longer stuck in the past.
So there's so much to unpack, but I do want to talk about Michigan's Upper Peninsula first, because this is a place I've never been, but after reading this book, I feel I must go there now. What's your own connection to that area, Diane, and what's it like?
Yeah, I really believe the UP just resides in my DNA. It's where all of my dad's family is from. They were all commercial fishermen up there. So during my formative years, I have just so many memories, where my roots are just there. So many memories of just fishing and walking in the woods and picking blueberries and porch talks, sitting with my family at night. There's no technology. We were barefoot and fancy-free, just, riding on the boats, building rafts, skipping stones. It was a time of just purity, loveliness, goodness, and just curiosity,
It's magical. Really, the way you describe it. Yeah, go ahead, Margaret.
New Hampshire and northern Michigan seem to have a lot in common. I know I'm very close to people who have actually lived in both places, and they seem to have a similar connection to each one. And I felt like I was in two places when I was reading the book, because, loving nature and wildlife and animals and birds and waterfowl and all fisheries, which we have here on the coast of New Hampshire. And I wondered throughout if being in New Hampshire and living in New Hampshire made it easier to recreate northern Michigan when you weren't there. Were you aware of the similarities, and did they resonate with you in the course of writing this book?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and absolutely. I made a number of trips back to the UP. I road tripped it, I explored the areas, but then I'm in my 7-by-7-foot little writing shed, and I'm thinking, I want her to see something. And I would just take off in the woods, and I would notice the flowers coming up, and I would identify them. And how would I describe the lichen? How would I describe the fungi you're growing? So it was so nice to be in that same very similar ecosystem. Even the boreal forest, which is such a big part of the book, we have that here.
Right.
Yeah, and as someone who loves nature like Margaret, I so appreciated the way that you described the flora and fauna, and I almost thought, does she have a biology degree? Does she talk to a lot of biologists? So that was great. And in Where the Water Meets the Sky, the natural world, it's more than just a setting, it's who these people are. But as you said when you first introduced the novel, Diane, it portrays a young woman seeking to heal emotional pain through the beauty, the peace, the power of the Upper Peninsula. And that's your story too. I was amazed to read that in the midst of writing this novel, you were diagnosed with 5 brain aneurysms. How did that experience shape the writing of this book? And what a terrible thing to go through, by the way.
Yeah, it shaped the writing of the book, and it shaped me as an author, and it shaped me as a person, and it also redefined my faith. So I was in the middle of working on the book, and I think when I got the diagnosis and realized 2 of the aneurysms were breaking down and I needed to get surgery, and the only surgeon who could do this surgery was down at Johns Hopkins. He was one of the only ones in the entire world.
Wow, in Maryland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was all ready to go, and I thought, I have to get the house ready. I have to get my affairs in order. I have to meet with my attorney. I have to end my life perfectly. It was this thing that came over me. There was a pressure. And I remember I even have to have the house clean, where the stove's clean. All of these things are done, because if I die, I don't want people coming into the messy house.
Oh my gosh.
So there was that too. You know, I know that's crazy, but it was just, I want everything in order. And then I need my children to remember all of those moments that make us who we are. And they're such an important part of my life, so I had to write down all the memories I had with my children. I also needed to finish the book, because if I died, it would never be done. And one of the risks of the surgery, you know, of course, could be brain deficits, but there could also be loss of vision. And I thought maybe just one eye, at least I could see out of the other, but that wasn't the case. That was the biggest risk, was loss of complete vision. So I'm rushing. You know, I'm feeling this pressure. I'm like, got to get this done. I'm texting them, I'm emailing the manuscript to a good friend every day, so in case I died, because also while I'm waiting for surgery, these aneurysms could completely go, and I might not even make it to surgery. The surgery was put on hold because the doctor came down with COVID.
Oh my gosh.
He gets over COVID, we go down, and then we get a call as soon as we check into the hotel room that now he has pneumonia.
Oh, dear.
We go back. So yeah, I was like
back to New
afraid
Hampshire.
afraid to even sneeze.
What a terrifying time.
Gosh,
So
Diane,
all of
that's
that-
so much.
It was a lot. And then we get the call, we can come, we pack the car, we head down. COVID was still going around a little bit. It does every year at this time. This was October, so we kept coolers. I was trying to not be exposed to things while we were on the way down. But there was this moment, I'm right outside the operating room. I'm on a gurney. To my left is there's probably 7 doctors and nurses scrubbing in. In front of me are wide glass doors with more machines than you can imagine. It felt like outer space, and all the room was full of doctors. And I'm lying on this gurney, and it was like all those rocks in my hands, all those things I'd been clenching onto all my life, trying to make life better, trying to get ready for this surgery. But even before that, just trying to push my life ahead, right? Keep going, keep doing, keep surviving, keep working, make sure everybody's okay. It was just like everything just fell from my hands. And I went into the operating room. I just felt this peace come over me. And this nurse sat down, she took my hand and she said, "What is your favorite song?" And then she played it on her phone.
I'm getting choked up. That's so beautiful.
And she sat down
kind.
with me and held my hand, and there was just this peace, and there was a surrender, and everything was okay. And that's the moment I take with me that I won't ever forget, because then during the grace state of recovery, once I was back home, and I was well enough, I went back and revisited the novel, and I'm going, my gosh, I can see. I can metaphorically and literally see. And I saw everything differently. Colors looked different. Emotions felt different. They looked like something. They became more visual to me. People just, I don't know, being really present with people in a different kind of way and noticing things that we never noticed before because we're rushing to that next thing. And I think it was more than just mindfulness for me. In some ways, it almost felt like a detachment from myself, right? And because I felt like in some ways I was watching myself, watching the people. So I was also beholding myself with more love and more gentleness.
And a stark awareness.
Oh, and
of
awareness for
everything.
sure. So then when I revisited the novel, I thought, this is what's different about my writing. The novel has to be so much more than what this rough draft is. It is more. There needs to be more emotion. There needs to be more with Abby. How do I capture that mystical mystery? How do I capture that emotion? And so I tried to do what I had done in going into the surgery. I tried to just detach. Whereas before when I wrote, maybe this would come up later in your questions, but before when I wrote, I would want to experience whatever the character was experiencing so I could write it as if writing it firsthand. I didn't want to do that anymore because then you're so caught up in the experience you don't even notice it. So I pulled back and I thought, okay, now I'm just sitting on the periphery, almost like an out-of-body experience, and I'm watching these characters. And it's crazy how much more you can understand and see when you're watching them. You can understand their emotions, you can understand what they're feeling, and I thought, this is great. And so I would put on really soulful music and play it on repeat and just keep, immersing myself into that place, that mental place. But then I thought, how do I translate that into my own life? How do I translate that moving forward with the writing?
That's an incredible story, and I'm so glad that it ended up well for you. I mean, you're here, you finished the book.
Too.
The book is the book is terrific. You're seeing, you're alive, and I just listening to you tell that story, I can see it in the prose. There's a there's a purity and a simplicity, and when I say purity and simplicity, I mean it's just the feelings are there, they're real, and you're not gobbling them up with, complex descriptions. And and when you said I talk to my kids about what really matters, that's what Abby's family is doing in this book. So I can see that. I can see that.
Thank you.
Well, and the use of the small moments and the revealing of the characters through the ordinary, the very specific ordinary, which then draws out or reveals the emotion, I think is just so well done in this book. And you've just gone through an explanation of how you're able to accomplish that.
Yeah, that's what I meant by purity, and I think you said it better, Margaret. Yeah, it's simple, and then all of a sudden it's not simple. It's the real thing that we've been thinking about all along. So I also want to ask you, Diane, about how you use time. I really liked that. It's fluid, it shifts. I mean, I'm only a first-time novelist, so I just go, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. You don't do that, and I love that. How does that reflect the way Abby experiences the world? Time isn't this happened, this happened, this happened. It's sort of a more watery thing, if I could put it that way.
Well, first-time novelist, but a very good one.
Thank you.
I loved your book.
Thank you very much.
Loved the book. Yeah, I think it still ties into everything that I said before as well. I think we have two times that we operate with. We have chronos, we have a beginning and an end. We structure our days that way. But we fail to recognize sometimes the kairos time. And the kairos time is what I really want to access into the writing, because that's the only way I can access the mystical mystery, right? The magic. So we actually, I think, live in kairos. We just aren't aware of it and acknowledge it. So whether it's in an experience with someone, whether it's in a divine moment where we have that still point in time with a sunset or a sunrise, or the laughter of a child, or the laughter of anyone.
Or you're in the very thin place where
we're in a liminal space. Yeah. Yes, we're in this liminal space. And I wanted to capture that liminal space in the writing, in Abby's story. That means she can be lying on this velvety moss, cushion of moss. She can be listening to the lake lapping over the rocks, but she can also feel the scratchiness of the hay in the barn with Brew when they were children playing. That is an eternal moment. We tend to lock those in places in time, and they're not locked up. you know, that time still exists, because in Kairos there is no beginning and end. So I just wanted to make sure she had access to those moments.
Well, the ease of it, you know, as writers, we're always warned, you know, not to dump and dwell in backstory where it interrupts the flow and everything. And the way that you used memories to draw the character and the reader back in time is really effective and so real. And it comes so naturally that you're not pulled out of the story by the memories and by what has happened in the past. But it feels perfectly smooth and seamless, and I really admire that.
Thanks.
Something else I wanted to ask you about that I appreciate about this novel is your great male characters, Diane. And, you know, often in novels, not always, but often when there's a female protagonist, the other key characters around her are, you know, a mother, a sister, an aunt, a grandma, and that's lovely. But surrounding Abby are two strong men, her uncle and her father. And by strong, I mean they support her, they love her. She knows they are there for her. Was that a deliberate choice to have Abby especially supported by these, you know, wonderful male figures in her life, or did that just kind of come about as you were writing?
You have surprised me with the question. How's that? No, I wasn't even aware.
I'm a
that
mother
I
of
was doing
sons,
it.
so I'm
But you know, that
interested in
said,
male characters.
yeah. So that said, I can look back at my life and see the male influences as far as being so conducive to my relationship with the natural world. So whether that was my Uncle Billy. My dad was not an outdoorsman. He was a sports guy. You know, I'd go listen to the Chicago Cubs in his car with him on the AM dial, right? But my Uncle Billy, he ran the fish house. And, you know, his sons were all working at the fish house. There was my Uncle Dale, who actually her father is based on my Uncle Dale. And yeah, he was, you know, taking me out on his boat all the time, taking me fishing. And then I have 3 sons, and they constantly inspire me. They're all unbelievably well-read. They love the outdoors. One of them's an environmental attorney. So I think I have that. I have brothers. So, and then there's also Uncle Dennis is based on a real friend. Like,
I love Uncle Dennis.
Uncle Dennis is based
Uncle
on.
Dennis is awesome.
He's based on my best friend, Glade Haddon, who is an archaeologist out in western Colorado, lives completely off the grid. I love Glade. I love his wife. But Glade has been part of my adult life for so long, taking me on archaeological digs, letting me help him survey places, you know, dropping me off in the wilderness and then taking off, and I'm there to fend for myself. But I could talk to him about anything, and he knows everything about flora, about the fauna, about, you know, if you dropped him down by the ocean, he'd tell you about the tides. He just was born with this innate connection with nature. So yeah, I think.
What's so cool about him is that he's encouraging, and you have the constant sense that he cares about Abby, and yet he's able to allow her the independence and trust in her enough for her to more and more come into her own. And I think that's just a really wonderful. I mean, it's not fair to call it a device because that makes it sound artificial, but it's such a wonderful relationship, and he, as a character, he's so important to that manifestation of her as she moves through the story.
As Glade is in mine, yeah.
You're very fortunate.
I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, actually, some of my best childhood memories are fishing with my dad.
Yeah.
We went fishing a lot, and I had a wonderful uncle who I just adored. So I really appreciated, you know, it's great to have strong female characters, and we often see them in novels featuring young women, but it was nice to see her supported by the uncles and dad in her life. So Where the Water Meets the Sky has 2 huge reveals in it, and of course, I would not say anything more than that, but one of them, you completely just hit me sideways. I did not see that coming. Were those reveals planned at the start of your writing? Did you know how those plot points were going to work out when you started out, or did they emerge later, Diane?
So there was one plot twist. I remember the days exactly. I was January 26th, I was sitting in my shed, and I was actually working on some nonfiction writing, and this idea came to me, and I sat on the floor. I was like, okay, I have to breathe here. I need to spread out a little bit here. And I got a legal pad, and I started writing things down that came to me, and I thought, I think this is like feeling a little divinely inspired here. I think I'm supposed to do this. Don't know why. Maybe it's just for myself. Then I called a really good friend who lives in Vermont, and I said, John, I need to run this by you. What do you think? And he said, I think if you do this, it's going to be a very powerful book. And he really encouraged me, and then he read drafts of the book throughout while I was writing.
Yeah. It is
another male influence.
Yeah, it is a powerful book. And you said that you sat down and kind of had this spiritual moment, and I know you're a very spiritual person, Diane, with a strong religious faith. How does that guide your work, shape your work?
You know, I could sort of probably give you more of the trope kind of answer. That's probably not even grammatically correct, but but which is, you know, writers, we have to have faith, we have to believe in what we can't see, we keep going, we have faith in our work. But for me, it's bigger than that. It's not faith in the work. You know, God is love, God is hope, God is truth. I was telling my kids this once. I said, we all think we know the truth, or we have the truth, or this, but God is the truth. And we just keep digging and seeking to get to that truth. I also believe God's Spirit is inspiration. And when I feel inspired and so moved to write, I know then God is with me, and we're co-creators in this. And I really believe that. Like, I labor over every word, every sentence, how the words sound together, which word choice is right. It's just such an important part of my writing process. And if the inspiration isn't there, I won't write. And I don't mean, oh, I'm cleaning the house, I'm inspired, I'm going to go write. I still show up in my shed. I still have a designated time to write. And I have, like, my writing spiritual mentor, who's Barry Lopez. I read his books over and over and over again. I feel like he is also with me in a strange way. But I sit down with that, and I can also read Mary Oliver and just access beautiful work, and then I feel something come over me. You know, there's so much inspiration. I feel God in so many works of art. I feel God in fine art. I feel God in beautiful architecture. I feel God in beautiful literature and poetry. And so once I can access, I'm like, okay, we're ready now. You know, and once it leaves, when it's time to stop. So yeah, it's an important part.
It's huge, and it comes through. It comes through in the book. Margaret, any thoughts there?
Well, I'm curious about, I know in the acknowledgments you thanked the individual who helped you create the writing shed. And so as writers, you know, where we write, where other writers write, and how they write, and what their process or habits are. But I'd love to know more about your writing shed, how it came about, where you were writing before you had it, and what made you decide that this was something that was going to be nurturing for your whole process and your creativity.
Yeah, I've written the last 3 of my novels have been written in the writing shed. It's evolved over the years. Now it has heat, it has electricity. It's literally it has a bed. I built the bed up high. I have to climb up to it.
Oh, it's a year-round.
It can be, yes. I put a little compost toilet in there. I got tired of running in and out of it. I can stay out there as long as I want. And when there's a lot happening in my life or a lot of noise in the house, because I want the house to always be a place where everybody can come. And then I can go out there and get quiet. My writing, I used to be much more rigorous. I have to be writing by 6 o'clock. I have to get up at 4 o'clock. I have all these things I have to do. I can't be distracted or disturbed before that time. And since my surgery, that's all gone out. It's like, wow, was I making the writing my God? You know, like I think some writers do. I think we start to worship the process. And it almost, whether it's an addiction or whether it becomes a God or it's just too high on the pedestal, we need to reel that in. It's gotten too important in our lives. And so now I get up every day and I have my time with God, but I also, where are my priorities today? And whether that writing time comes at 3 in the afternoon, or whether it comes at 6 p.m. or whether it comes at 4 in the morning, it's okay.
I was going to ask you how this book is different from all your other books. And obviously each book is different. It has different characters, different story, but it almost sounds like there's a different, I don't want to say depth because all your books are probably deep, but does this book feel different to you than the others?
It does. One thing, just on a surface level, I love it that the novel is not being boxed in as a thriller or as a mystery, because I don't think any of my books have really been that. They've really been about the people and their relationships with the natural world. But this book, fortunately, they tried in the beginning. Well, they didn't really try, but they were like, it's a little bit of a mystery. But then the readers haven't taken it that way at all, thank goodness. So that, I would say it's different. But I think the other thing, I was talking to one of my sons, my middle son, he lives out in Colorado, and he had just finished the novel. And he said, "Mom, I'm really proud of you." And he said, "It reads like a poem." He said, "It's lyrical." He said, "I felt like..."
Very observant.
He said, "I felt like I was watching the birds." And it just had that peaceful feel. And I think if I had wanted the readers to take something away, I would want them to not read to see what's going to happen, to read and walk away with peace.
And beauty.
Yeah, one of the things I try to live my life by is know what brings you peace and protect it at all costs. And I would like my readers to experience the same thing, to feel peace and take that away from the book. So I think that is what's different. I love all of my books that I've written, but this one has a different quality.
It's interesting because I was going to ask you about poetry, because there is a very poetic quality to the writing in this book, but then I had so many other questions that I took it out, so I'm glad you said that. So we have to wrap it up pretty soon, but Margaret, any last thoughts or questions from you? And then I've got one more for Diane.
This kind of ties into what we're saying about, how to pigeonhole it or present it or what kind of a book it is, but it's an adult story with a very young adult sensibility because of the protagonist and her age, and I think that as a coming of age book, it's very successful on that level. But also, in young adult literature, a lot of times the lead character or a lot of the characters are dealing with traumas that have happened and how they work through them, and the angst of it and everything. And what really appealed to me about the book was that there are questions, there are mysteries, there are some hard things that are dealt with in this book, but that peacefulness and that sense of trust and of hopefulness and of dedication to doing the things that the characters are given to do, following their calling, it makes it a very uplifting story, and not a angsty teenage story, if that makes any sense. And I think that there's a lot of value in that for readers of all ages.
It is uplifting. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I love to close out Read Local NH, Diane, with what my guests like to read for New Hampshire authors, and it can be anyone from, way back when to somebody who came up with a book last week. So what New Hampshire authors do you enjoy reading?
I don't think there's a work by a New Hampshire author I haven't enjoyed. I think we have a lot of just beautiful writers in the state. But I think today I'm going to have to give a shout out to the faculty I taught with in SNHU's MFA program, and that would be Robert Begebing, Catherine Taller, Katie Taller, Richard Adams Carey, Merle Drown. They're just so talented, and I've learned so much from them. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Congrats on the book.
Thank you.
And readers will really enjoy it. Poetic is really, that's a great way to describe it. Thank you for being here, Diane.
Thank you both very much.
And Margaret, thank you for co-hosting with me today. It was fun to have you.
Nice to be here.
So that's Diane Les Becquets. She was talking about her just released novel, Where the Water Meets the Sky, and Diane is the author of 5 other novels, including the national bestseller, Breaking Wild. Well, thanks as always to Concord Community Television for producing Read Local NH. Check out Concord TV at yourconcordtv.org and the YouTube channel Concord NH TV. Again, that's yourconcordtv.org or on YouTube Concord NH TV. Our theme music is by the Sound Effect Kings. Thanks everybody for being here for Read Local NH.